Thank God, sir.
That's better. I think the person with Galaxy A30 should please name a device so you can capture for attendance.
Okay, sir. My name is Zonita.
Okay, you've named it. I'm still seeing Galaxy A30. There's no name on it. Please try and name your device.
It's written Gladys BC. I named it right from the beginning.
No, Gladys BC is there, but there's a person using Galaxy A30.
I'm working on it.
I'm the one using A30.
Okay. If you are the one, BC has named her own, is the second person. So she says she's working on it.
Mine is Gladys BC. Maybe another person is, but mine is Gladys.
Another person, yes.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Working on it.
Sorry, I just came up and I'm trying to fix it.
Okay.
It's okay. It's all right. Thank you. And please, let's mute our mics. That's one of the rules of our engagement on this platform. If you are not saying anything, can you please mute your mic? Okay, thank you. Orokoto, Omoto, yes, please mute your mic. Akolade Olaiya, mic. Thank you. Is Isha Okambina on set? So like we had on the platform, and the next class after this, SWPCE, SWPCE 60. So sorry for the interruption. Like I said, the facilitator for SWPCE 604 will not be available because he is presently on transit to Abuja, and he will not be taking it while he's on transit. So he has apologized that we have 2 hours next week to make up for what will be lost for today. I hope we understand with him. And today's class, SWPCE 602, will be taken for 2 hours to make up for the hour that will be lost for today's class, the next class as well. Some people are asking me about 606. lecture notes. Please just bear with the facilitator. He is trying to update that lecture notes. That is why he's not been able to post that lecture. But in the interim, he's always on with you. As soon as possible, he will be able to uh, post the lecture notes all like other lecture notes 02 and 604. You bear with him a little while, and by the time it comes on, next class will be able to tell you more on how far he has. I want to say again, welcome to this module SWPCE 602. With me in the house that will be taking the lecture with me is a social worker Dina Ita. Started with us last week. She continued with us today, and interchangeably, I'll be coming in to give you some little direction and contributing on what to be done during this class. It's a practical class, and we just need to flow practically. Many of the things we're talking about here are something that we are aware of, but at a deeper level, we'll be communicating as those who have been on social work desk, knowing what we are doing, and some who are not on the desk already, opportunity for you to begin to look at issues of ethics, principles, and values of social work, because that is the core of our practice. We imbibe the ethics, principle, the value of social work. Will just be like quacks, and we don't intend producing quacks as professionals in Nigeria. We want each and every one of us to be part, to be those who also know what we are doing and we value the premium we put on our profession, and the principles of our profession must on a daily basis be imbibed by us consciously. We should be able to know how to meander within these three issues. That is the ethics, the principles, and the value of social work in practical terms. I will not waste much of our time. I'll be calling on social work and dinner. I'll start from where we ended in the last class so that we can stay together. Thank you very much. You're welcome, social worker.
Thank you very much, Dr. Atere. You're all welcome to our class for today. Good morning once more. Last week, we talked about the ethics, meaning of code of ethics. And we also concluded on the note that the fact that we have ethics that guides the profession, it does not guarantee ethical behavior. There are situations where the social workers need to make decisions that will be based on some two conflicting opinions that are right. And we refer to that situation as ethical dilemma. So the fact that we have ethics and principles that guide the profession, of which the profession, social work, is based on. As social workers, we also need to be aware of ourselves, to have that professional identity and self-awareness that would enable us to have that personal commitment to engage in ethical practices. I repeat, as social workers, we cannot just leverage on the ethical standard of the profession to render services. We need to x-ray or assess and examine ourselves, our characters, and put it in line or put it in check so that it will enable us to have that personal commitment to engage in ethical practice. And I remember that before we rounded up or concluded last time, we left an unanswered question. So for the purpose of a reminder, I don't know if we can, let's see if we can trash that first before we proceed to the business of today. I gave us an assignment now to see how we can source for additional examples that can buttress the meaning of ethical dilemma. Please, who is Galaxy A30? You do well to edit your device name, please. Okay, Adewale, you want to say something?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Ms. Nayelon, we can't hear you. Like you're going to say something, but we can't hear you. You're breaking badly. Oh, sorry about that. Hello, Ms. Nanyelon. Okay. All right. Going forward, we talked about ethical dilemma as a situation whereby the social worker is faced with two conflicting opinions that are actually right. And the social worker needs to determine which opinion will be best suited for the situation and the client. So that comes to, or that brings to the fore the importance of competence in social work. That brings to the fore the importance of self-awareness. Because if you're not aware, a social worker who is not aware of himself, who lacks that self-awareness, it will become difficult for such a social worker to settle for the best option at this point in time, without necessarily allowing his or her emotions to get involved in the process of making a choice for the client. Going forward, we'll now be looking at the fact that social work ethics has its purpose. There are reasons why we have this code of ethics to guide the profession. And one of the reasons, according to National Association of Social Work Code of Ethics, is that the code of ethics enables us to identify the core values on which social work's mission is based. It is by virtue of the ethical code or the standard of the profession that we can now envisage or identify these core values, that as we proceed, we will come to know what these core values are. Another purpose for the code of ethics is that it summarizes broad principles that reflect the profession's core values, and also put in place some set of specific ethical standards that is expected to guide the social work practice. Like we said earlier, the social work profession is both academic and practice-based. So to enable you practice social work, and of course, while in academics, you're also practicing social work to some extent. So to enable you practice social work, you must subject yourself to some set of ethical standards.
I guess we lost the facilitator. Network has not been friendly today. Some people. Yeah.
Sorry.
I guess we lost him. Okay, he's back now. Please let's try.
Okay. Sorry for that break in transmission. Now, going forward, the code of ethics is also designed in a way that will enable social workers to understand or identify some relevant considerations when making professional choices, especially when these choices or decisions and obligations conflict. When these choices or decisions conflict. So the code of ethics has been designed in a way that would enable a social worker to identify other relevant options. An example is the fact that in principle and in practice, it's expected that every client should be treated or considered as an individual. That's based on the principle of individualism. The fact that you're vast and you're well experienced when it comes to a particular issue does not mean you must always address that same issue with different clients the same way. You want to consider your clients in the context and his or her uniqueness. And let's take, for example, a medical setting, for example. There are some medical procedures that some clients might not necessarily accept because of either their cultural or religious background. Oftentimes in this kind of settings, we hear people complaining that if you don't want this, you better leave or you're going to die. But that's not the position of a social worker. Or that's not the position of a social worker. Now, based on full consideration, a social worker in such a situation will be assisted to consider other or take into consideration other choices and expose same to the clients for the client to settle for that which is favorable to his or her culture or religion. Furthermore, the code of ethics provides ethical standards for which the general public can hold social work profession accountable. It is expected that as social workers, we are supposed to practice in a way that would uphold integrity, that would keep the face of the profession shining. So it is by virtue of the ethical code of the profession that we will be giving the general public something to rely on, something to hold on. It's just like, let me still borrow a leaf from the medical profession or the medical practitioners. Oftentimes we bank on them because we know that they have a particular oath they swore to. And as such, they wouldn't want to do anything that will go contrary to that oath, which will eventually lead to them losing their license. And because of that, the public normally have confidence in them. So by virtue of this ethical code of conduct or practice or standard in social work, we extend something valuable to the public that, okay, fine, hold us accountable for this. This is who we are. This is what we can do. This is what we can achieve. And if you don't see us operating on this slide, then hold us accountable. So that's one of the basic objective or purpose of the ethical standard in social work. It enables us win the trust of the public and for us to hold, for them to hold us accountable. And that is why, as we'll come to know, as a social worker, you have serious responsibility to the profession. And one of the responsibility you have to the profession is to hold the professional ethical standard, because it's not just going to protect you and your professional relationship with your client, but it will continue to keep the profession going. Finally, the code enables or creates opportunity for practitioners to socialize, to gather new ideas. It helps us to work within the mission, the values, principles of the social work profession, especially when you try to bring other professionals to the table to drive home services to a particular client. The code articulates standards that social work profession can use to assess whether social workers have engaged in unethical behavior or conduct. So we see that this standard, or this ethical standard, is a tool that the social work profession can even use to assess a professional, a practitioner, to know if he or she is engaging in an unethical behavior. Now, in social work relationship with clients, we are oftentimes exposed to malpractice suits, what we refer to as malpractice suits. And when there is a perceived wrong, or it is suspected that a client or a social worker has engaged in a wrongdoing in the process of rendering services to his or her client, such a social worker would be liable to what is referred to as malpractice suit. And one of the procedures or the process in assessing or making a conclusion as to whether this client is, or this practitioner or the social worker is guilty or not, is to leverage on the ethical standard of practice, the ethical code of social work practice or profession. So you see that this ethical code also enables the profession to assess the professionals, the practitioners, to know if they have engaged in ethical conduct. So the National Association of Social Work has formal procedures to adjudicate ethical complaints filed against its members. And in subscribing to this ethic or this code, social workers are expected to cooperate in its implementation, participation in the National Association of Social Work adjudication proceedings, and any disciplinary ruling for sanctions based on it. Now, what are the values and principles of social work? Last week, when we're trying to establish the ethics of the profession, someone came up with a question that that seems like, or it was looking like the ethics were trying to conflict or contradict the principles. And I remember telling him to calm down. I don't know if he's here. That subsequently we would delve deep into the principles of social work, and here we are. But before we go forward, I would like to get your feedback as to the purpose of code of ethics. Now, as a form of question, it is expected that the social worker, as a social worker, you practice based on the ethics or the ethical code of the profession. Now, how is that code a tool in assessing you? Or how can this code be used in assessing a social worker's performance? This is a question. Feel free to react to it.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. Yes, sir. The question, sir, the code of practice or code of ethics. So the way I understand it, sir, it's like what a social worker must know and understand even before you go into the practice at all as a student of social work, because that is what guides our activity. That is what guides our operation so that we will not fall into error. And the last part of the lecture, you exposed to us that there are disciplinary committee, or let me say disciplinary panels that are also in place. I don't know whether you are hearing me, sir.
I hear you clearly.
Hello, sir.
I can hear you clearly. Please proceed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That you made us to understand that there are disciplinary panel or disciplinary committee that are already in place in case a social worker fall into an error. And also you gave us the example of the medical practitioners, whereby if they fall into error, their licenses can be revoked. So I see the code of ethics as something that we must understand very well before we go into this practice. So it is what guides our activity. It is what guides us as a student of social work. It is what guides us even as a practitioner of social work. So the code of ethics is what we rely on. It's where we are coming from and must be duly understand before we go into any kind of activity. That is the way I understand it, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for that nice opinion. Any further response? Any further reaction?
Hello, sir.
Okay. Mr.
Hello?
Omar.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah, from the question you just asked, the ethical code in any discipline means that is the standard and the procedures of that discipline is enshrined in their ethic, in their code that must be followed for you to achieve a certain goal of those organizations. So as a social worker, what will guide us in our day-to-day activities as a social workers is our ethical code. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We appreciate that response too. Those are beautiful points made. Going forward, we will now be looking at the core values and the principles of social work. When we talk about the core values, whenever you hear the word core values of social work, what should come top of your mind should be the following 6 key concepts. And it is noteworthy, or it's worthy of note, that these key concepts that constitute the core value of social work has its principles. And above these core values, we still have some other sets of principles as we'll come to explore in the process of this class. Now, the mission of social work is deeply rooted in a set of core values. And these core values, embraced by all social workers throughout the profession's history, forms the foundation of social work, unique purpose and perspective. These core values make social work unique. In fact, by the time you start to explore these core values, it will enable you to differentiate social work from other helping professions. It will also help you to identify social work as something you do not out of emotion, and it will also help you identify the fact that social work is truly a science. What are these core values then? One is service to humanity. The purpose for social work generally is centered on rendering services to humanity. There is no part or aspect of social work that does not have anything to do with service rendering. So no matter what you're doing as a social worker, your efforts and the effort of the profession is geared towards rendering a service. And that service is to humanity. So if you are practicing social work and you're engaging in some sort of or level of practice, what should always come to your mind should be, am I rendering services to humanity? So now these core values now should be like a scale where we place our practices or whatever we are doing to see for ourselves if we are doing the right thing in line with the principles of the profession or the core values of the profession. Now, in rendering these services, another thing that social work profession is so concerned about is social justice. That is why it is always said that wherever you go, as far as humans exist there, it is a fertile ground for social work. Because there is no way where you meet people, and even if a particular person decides to leave, will I say the city, and said he wants to go and stay alone in the forest, that person will not be existing alone. Humans cannot exist in a vacuum. There will be some level of relationship between that person that have decided to go and stay in the forest with animals, the vegetations of the field. These are our environment. How is that environment impacting on that individual? Social work can always come in there. And if there is any perceived injustice, social workers come to address it. For example, issue of gender inequality. Issue of some cultures that segregate or relegate some population to the background by virtue of who they are or their economic background. Another level of social injustice can be seen among the disabled. How can we create a just society that will favor all as human beings? Social worker is at the heart of social justice. Not just informing and driving home policies, but trying to go down to grassroots to identify some cultural practices, even some little behaviors, small behaviors that are common in family settings, where some of these injustices or perceived injustices emanates from. Social workers seek to address them. And in rendering services to people, we also consider the dignity of people and the worth of the person. That makes up for the third core value. We've made mention of service to humanity. We've made mention of social justice. We are now considering the dignity and worth of a person. Where we find ourselves as social work is at the top. That is why, as a professional, you need to hold yourself high. People that come to you in need of your services have been shattered by the problems they are going through. Their sense of self-worth has been shattered. Most of them lack confidence in themselves. Most of them are depressed. Most of them don't know where to go to. In fact, at some point, relatively, you're a god to them. But then, that does not mean that because they come to you in need, in search for assistance and support, that does not mean you should run them down. No matter how low they feel, we still identify the fact that they have abilities. We still respect their person. And that is why we don't just assist individuals just the same way a philanthropist would do. Rather, we take advantage of this ability, identifying resources with the individual, the individual. Nkechi, mute yourself. Thank you. So we see that we take advantage of the fact that as humans, no matter how low we can be or our clients can be, or no matter the situation they find themselves, there are some underlying abilities. So the social work profession as a value is geared toward identifying those abilities, identifying those resources, leveraging on those resources to assist or render services to the client. And by so doing, you're helping to inform or assist the client to identify the fact that his or her sense of self-worth should be intact, and that he is important, and that we respect and value them, no matter how the society views them. Of course, that thought alone is empowering. Is capable of dragging them out to their mainstream of social function. Again, as a skill, a social worker is expected to place his or her intervention process or his or her relationship with his client on the scale of dignity and worth of a person. How are you relating with your clients? In your relationship with your clients, is it evident that you respect and uphold the dignity of your clients? That is central to social work profession, and we want to uphold it as a core value. We also have another one. The fourth one is importance of human relationships. That is the fourth value of social work. Now, what's the principle behind this value? The principle behind the importance of human relationship stipulates that humans do not exist in a vacuum. And as such, that madman you see on the streets, those street children, the abandoned children, all belong to a family that exists in an environment, that exists in a community, within a political and geographical entity, with the adequate or required resources that we can leverage on to assist this client. And as such, we take advantage of the importance of human relationship. In fact, we see it as therapeutic. That, okay, fine, this person is having this problem because there is an error somewhere, probably during his upbringing or in his family. Okay, this man is not performing well in his job. Probably he's experiencing pressure at home. This child is not doing well at school. Probably this child is being abused at home. What can we do? What can we censor to repair this problem and assist this client to function maximally. Then we start to look out for the parents, the family members. If it's a man, his wife. If it's a woman, the husband. We try to look out for communities where the person comes from, his country, and lots more. So we value relationship, human relationship, and we try to see how we can use human relationship to render and assist our clients. Another central thing to social work profession is integrity. A social worker is not expected to practice in a way that is questionable to his or her character. By the time your way of practice or your conduct is questionable, then you're outside the expounded boundaries of the values and ethics of the social work profession. There are things you're not expected to do. And to avoid things like this, to uphold your integrity and the integrity of the profession, there are things you need to avoid in your professional relationship with your client. For example, your client is not your business partner.
Movement.
So you need to practice in a way that you would uphold the integrity of the profession and to ensure that your client trusts you. You need to practice in a way that your client sees you as an ally. Your ability to create a safe space that will make your clients comfortable with you in that therapeutic or professional relationship. That too is central to the social work profession and it's a core value. We don't joke with the integrity of the profession. That is why earlier on, when we're talking about ethics and the fact that the existence of ethical standard does not guarantee ethical behavior, and that going beyond the expanded boundaries of the principles and the ethics of the profession can make you liable to malpractice suits, which could eventually lead to your license being withdrawn. So that shows that as social work, the social work profession cares about integrity, cares about its image. And as such, while practicing, you want to ensure you practice within these expanded boundaries that will ensure that you uphold the integrity of the profession. Again, you can place your relationship with your client on a scale of integrity and ask yourself, am I practicing in a way, am I relating in a way that will make my conduct questionable with my clients? And finally, competence. Earlier on, we made mention of the fact that the importance of research in social work can never be overemphasized. As a social worker, you're expected to be completely equipped for every good work. The social work profession is broad-based. The knowledge base of social work profession is broad. It cuts across all disciplines. So it's not something you will be saying that, okay, fine, you have an excuse to say, okay, fine, this is not my area. Fine. Even when it is not your area, you must have a partial knowledge of that area. You'll be able to know who and where to refer your clients to in a situation where it is beyond you. And that can only be done or achieved if the social worker in question is competent enough. Now, how can you as a social worker be competent? Like what you're doing. Most of you are already practicing social work in your various field of practice, in your offices, in your businesses. But because you want to develop your capacities, you're here. We have seminars, we have workshops, we have conferences where you attend for the purpose of not just networking, but for cross-fertilization of knowledge, which will eventually contribute to building your capacities. And that is why the social work profession considers this aspect to be very important. And from time to time, modalities are always put in place to prepare and train social workers. So always take advantage of such trainings to build and develop yourself. Going forward, we want to look at the principles of social work. I would still continue by highlighting some of those principles of social work and the core values of social work we've mentioned earlier. For example, service to humanity. One of the principles behind rendering service to humanity is the fact that the goal of a social worker is to help people meet their needs, people in need. And we also help them address their problems. Social workers elevate service to others above self-interest. Social workers draws on their knowledge, values, and skills to help people in addressing problems. Social workers also encourage, or social workers are encouraged rather, to volunteer some portion of their professional skills with no expectation of significant financial return. Now, let me buttress this point. Since rendering service is central to social work as a core value, the principle there states that rendering service should be more paramount than self-aggrandizement. It is believed that, and we agree that where a man walk, or where they say, where man walk, nothing in the job, no doubt. But then, in social work, it is expected that your quests, your interests, your desire to render service should be stronger than your desire to make money from the profession. And this is so because it will help you keep you in check. It will help you to focus on the mission and objective of the profession and the reason for your relationship with your clients. Now, the principles behind social justice. Like I said earlier, social workers pursue social change on behalf of vulnerable and oppressed population, individuals, communities, and groups. Social workers are change agents, and we focus primarily on issues of poverty, unemployment, discrimination, and other forms of social injustices that are perpetuated by some set of people or group of persons because of their relative power in the society, or that are perpetuated by some sort of practices. Social workers seek to challenge such repugnant practices. Social workers also seek to promote sensitivity to and knowledge about oppression. There are things people do. For example, before now, there are things we practice and we feel that, okay, fine, it is how our forefathers used to behave. But then we've come to notice that this particular way of doing things is the way we are where we are. So there is need for us to shift so that we can grow. For example, there used to be a time where it was believed that women are not expected to go to school because a woman's place should always be in the kitchen. And of course, we come to see that that has led to or contributed to the level of poverty today. Because come to think of it, women constitute the majority of our population. And imagine the majority of your population not being educated. The multiplier effect will lead to infant mortality rate, increase in infant mortality rate, and lots more. And even about population and the rest. So social work profession seeks to identify those repugnant practices that seeks to relegate people to the background or seeks to perpetuate cultural, generational poverty. And by empowering this set of persons with the needed knowledge to bring them out from the shackles of such practices. Dignity and worth of a person. Social workers respect the inherent dignity of worth of people. Like we said earlier, why people come to us at their point of need, we try to address their problems, treat them in a respectful and caring way, be mindful of the differences of cultural diversity and religious affiliations. We promote clients' socially responsible self-determination. We seek to enhance client self-capacity, and we also play dual responsibility to clients, both in their interest and the broader societies. So while we are trying to address a client's issue as an individual, we try to see how we address the societal issues too. We also talked about human relationship, importance of human relationship. Social workers understand that relationship between and among people are very important vehicle to change. And as such, we try to censor relationship. We take advantage of relationship by engaging people as partners in helping processes. We also seek to strengthen relationship among people in a purposeful effort to promote, to restore, to enhance the well-being of individuals. We talked about integrity, that social workers are expected to behave in a trustworthy manner. And social workers are also expected to act honestly and responsibly in a way that will promote ethical practices. And in competence, we say social workers practice within their areas of competence and develop and as well as enhance their professional expertise. And one way we can do this is to always be open to personal growth, attend conferences, workshops, seminars, and the rest. Social workers strive to increase their professional knowledge and skills. And while doing this, we apply them in practice. Going forward, we'll now be looking at ethical principles screened. But before we proceed, so far, we've talked about the core values of social work. Let me get feedbacks from you. just in case there are questions we need to address. Any question?
Yes, sir.
Please ask.
I have a question. Thank you very much, sir. My name is Olsimene. My question is talking about this our ethical code of conduct. How can I effectively manage a situation whereby my supervisor does not adhere to proper social etiquette in client interaction, given my position as a subordinate? How do I go about this, sir?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question as far as this course is concerned. In fact, as we proceed, you will come to identify some of the challenges a social worker might face as it has to do with ethical, the code of conduct of the profession. Like you rightly say, there are situations where, because your superior probably is not a social worker, and as such, would not want you to practice in a way that would uphold the profession's ethical standard. But then also know that as a social worker, this ethics or this code of conduct or ethical standards is not just to the profession, it's not just to the clients, and it's not just to your colleague. You also have responsibility to your organization. You also have a responsibility to your organization. So what are the mission and vision of your organization? So maybe while your colleague or your superior or your supervisor is asking you not to do this, probably it's because it's not in line with his or her or with the mission of your organization. So you have to give a thought to it. You have to listen to your superior. And like, I want to believe that I understand the point you're also going towards. For example, this is an environment we find ourselves where the social work profession is still growing, where other professionals want to detect for us. It becomes difficult. In fact, it is a problem. But like we said, the social work profession is still growing. And in such a situation, whereby you're being asked to do something by your superior, then it should be well documented. So that in the future, it will save you from any malpractice suit, from being liable to any malpractice suit that will be forwarded to you or that you might likely face. Your client say, okay, you know that, okay, fine, this client needs to, you need to adhere to the principle of confidentiality. But based on the objectives of your organization, your superior is saying, no, you need to expose this information to so and so place. It has to be documented. That, okay, fine, to some extent. I breached the principle of confidentiality because my supervisor said we need this information for so and so purpose. On this day, this time, and like this, you're done with your job. That is, by the way, while we still try to raise awareness and consciousness of the position of social work in Nigeria, and until we get there, at that point, whenever you're being asked to practice within this ethical standard, please make sure it is properly documented. I don't know if that addresses your question.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Jacob.
Hello, sir.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, sir. Good morning,
Morning.
everyone. Yes,
Sorry. Can you, sorry, let me say something, you speak. And I want this class to be interactive, okay? So oftentimes, whatever questions we have here, let's see how we ourselves too can address it, okay?
Okay, sir.
Let's hear you.
Hello,
okay.
sir.
Thank you, sir. I just want to buttress on the point, on the question that my colleague raised. Using my experience in the organization I presently work with, in a situation where your superior directed you to do anything that is against the ethical principle of your profession, and just like our lecturer has rightly answered, that documentation is key. It's very important, because there is a case like that I was opportune to know, where someone that did not do shift, we do shift here, she did not do the shift, and the superior said she should feel that she did the shift. She should feel the shift roster of verbal communication, and they knew that she did not do. At the end, when the management are aware of this, they have to query the woman. All effort to explain to the management that it is my superior that said I should feel it. But you know, it is against the ethics or principle of the organization. But there was no documentation to that. So I'm really happy with the answer. And from my life experience, I know that any directive given that is against the principles of your profession by your superior, there is need for him or her to document it for you for future purpose. Thank you. And also, I also want to just buttress on what I've learned so far, amongst which are the core values of social work. I was able to pick service, which is service to humanity, and I was able to pick social justice, dignity of worth of the person, that is the client, the importance of human relationship. I did sociology in my first degree and second degree, and I know the importance of social relationship, and it has really helped me in my personal life. So, and the last but not the least, integrity. So, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for those fine comments. Okay, I can see the hand of
Hello, sir.
Olamide up.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I have learned a lot. Sir, I want us to look at the cultural aspect of it. I am perceiving that social work will be in conflict with some culture. Taking our nation, Nigeria, as an example, we have different culture from different backgrounds and all. So looking at the marriage side of it, some culture, if the husband passes, they want maybe the junior brother to go ahead with the woman and take her up in the marriage. Now, going to the interior parts of our nation, even some side of Igbo culture also do that. Now, I'm now thinking, as a social worker or the social work, will be seeing that as an infringement on those people's rights, their personal rights and decisions. So I'm now thinking, sir, how can social work break the barriers of all this culture? Or let me put it this way, what is social work doing, this profession, what are they doing to break into the barriers of those cultural ends because it's very, very prevalent and predominant in some areas, even as we speak. And people are dying in silence. Some cannot even speak up. They are afraid and things like that. So, sir, I'm just looking at that aspect. I'm looking at
Thank
that
you very
aspect,
much
sir.
for.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, sir.
I saw there is one of your colleagues that wanted speaking before Lamide started talking. I don't know if you can speak up now. There is this person that wanted speaking before Lamide.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. Okay, sir, I wanted to ask, when we say documentation, that you document whatever maybe is against the code of conduct, maybe by your supervisor, you now said document it. How do you document it? Like in your own diary or in an email or how? So that's one question I wanted to ask.
When they say documentation, the documentation has to be written black and white. And then it has to be, it can be printed out and filed, or you save it on your system, somewhere your system has a file. Why is it being recorded or being kept? It's for future references and so that I can refer to it. If it is not documented, it does not exist. That is ISO standard. If it is not documented, it does not exist. But when it is documented, then it existed. So you have to have a record. You have to have a record of the system. It can be filed anywhere, but wherever you
Please, I'm sorry to interrupt the class. The network is breaking because so many mics are unmuted. Please, if you are not saying anything, please mute your mic. Please.
Hello. Can I go ahead, sir? Okay, thank you, sir. So it has to be documented. When they said I'm putting ISO standard into this because it is what existed. In ISO standard, it has to be white and black, filed in a file, arranged, or it has to be on the system file. Because it can even be voice recording to some extent. But as a social worker, we don't give back to that like that. But in ISO, it can be recorded. In HR practices too, they have a way they record voices. But they can tell you it's AI. But when it is documented, it takes time. And it is filed. Can refer
Sorry,
back to
I don't think you are getting me. I understand the point of documentation. Will I document it myself, given the fact it's my superior? Or do I print it out and say, oh, God, sign, and I sign? That's the aspect I'm asking. Because of superiors, we don't want to append their signature. So is it that I will print it out and keep it for my own record? That's the question I'm asking. Yes, I understand documentation.
Yeah, you can have it at your own record. Or you discuss with your boss. Because there are a lot of scenarios out there in the workplace. Whereby your immediate boss wants you to do this, and the general manager is against it. It depends on the organizational structure and principles. But where I work, it's easier for us because we have open and honest communication, and nobody will take you down on it. So it depends on the practice on the culture of the organization. If the organizational structure and culture give rooms for that, my own place is open and honest communication. Nobody will kill you for it. You just wait to sir, I am sorry. According to this and this, because there are procedures, according to my procedure, according to this procedure, I cannot do against this procedure.
Thank you very much. Oluwatosin Fidare. I don't know if I pronounce it well.
You did.
Thank you very much for that insight. You've shared your experience, which is very nice. I don't know if Jacob I can see Jacob's hand up. I don't know if he wants to react to the same.
Yes, sir. I just want to quickly react on the last question. It's very simple. When we talk of documentation, the key ingredient in documentation is signature. You can't just say black and white. The key ingredient there is the signature of your superior. because you can type something out, and if your superior did not sign it, it's not documented because he has not append his or her signature. So signature is key when we said documentation. Okay, you said I should fill leave form, to type it and put his name and tell the superior to sign it. If he can sign it, good. If he can't sign it, you know there's problem. So signature is key in documentation. That's what I want to just react on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Your responses are all brilliant. For Olamide, sorry, your question, we'll still address it. We'll still address your question. So I appreciate all your responses. In fact, you're on point. It's like Ronald wants to say something.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So my own issue is on the issue of documentation. All these things we are saying is based on our organization where we work. Every organization has a lay-down rule, and that lay-down rule is what will lead you to achieve the goals of those organizations. So your own organization might be different. His own goal might be different from my own organization. I'm an assistant chief social welfare officer. In my own area, the challenges we are having is that some of our superiors, they are old in the system. They are not with the contemporary social workers code of conduct and ethics. And most of them have not been going one seminar or the other. These seminars and workshops update each and every one of us with the current realities of a social worker. In any formal organization, the process is always documentation. In my own area, we don't work without documenting anything that we are doing. And we have a standard, and our standard is working for us because it is how the organization is being planned. So my own organizational way of handling social matters may not be the same from other of my colleagues here because we are not in the same organization. That is why some of us now find it difficult.
Hello, Ronald, can you quickly share your standard with us?
Okay. Our standard is this, like what I said earlier. We document everything. And before you document, there is a way. Let me just use one of the aspects, what we call family case work. Family case work is always between the couples or partners staying together. For instance, a man or a woman can walk into our organization, want to make a report. We call it formal petition or formal complaint. The person will, whether you know how to read and write, it will be documented in English language, and we can interpret it in your language. So please, for you to know.
Mr. Ronald,
sir.
We understand where you're going to. You understand? But the problem is, question on groundworks. The question your colleague asks is that if your superior is asking you to do something that is against the principle of social work, we are now saying that because you have a responsibility to your profession and to the organization you're working with, you also need to listen to your superior. Now, if that whatever your superior is asking you to do that is against the principle of social work, please do well to document that instruction from your superior, so that tomorrow, if that decision is going to expose you to malpractice suits, you won't be found wanting. And your colleagues now say that proper documentation can mean you writing the instruction down and asking your superior to sign so you can put it in the file, right? Yes. And I also want to add that your superior might likely forward this information via a text message. You can document that text message.
Yes.
You can print the text message and put in the file.
Yes, sir.
He can also communicate to you via an email or WhatsApp. You can print it out and document it in all. This is what I used to tell my people. As a social worker, you need to be competent. The way you carry yourself, if your superior or your colleagues in the office know that you know your onions, they won't play around you. For example, before a medical doctor append his or her signature on anything, he must make sure it won't dent his image and his profession.
Yes.
It's the same mentality we should have. And if we uphold ourselves, if we carry ourselves that high, even our superior would identify and respect us. I don't know if this addressed the question.
Yes, sir. We understood you. I understood you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I can see the hand of Thompson, Naomi Thompson.
Hello, good morning, sir. Yeah, good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone. Okay, I think you have said it all, but just to add one or two things, you have painted a scenario. It could be a person told you verbally, or the person told you, as in told you verbally one-on-one, or told you verbally where other colleagues are, or the person wrote an SMS or WhatsApp. So, and again, it depends on where we are working, the organization where we are working. Like where I work, mail is a standard. So even when the person don't expect you to write a mail, he cannot query you writing him a mail. And so that's why we must be ICT compliance as social workers. Seriously. Because if you have asked me to do a thing through WhatsApp, through my personal WhatsApp, I will quickly come and send you your mail, only you in copy, so that tomorrow they say, is there any evidence? I can, add other people to that mail and show them what I sent to you. You understand? Can always pull it through. So it also depends on where we are working. Things like mail are not readily available, or we don't do such thing. It will become difficult. But no superior will come and say, bring, let me sign. It's not possible. But when you say, Naomi, I want you to go and do this, I'll come back to the mail and say, based on your directive, sir, for me to carry out this, I will send a mail to that person only. It becomes a documented evidence. I think that's all I have to say. But in all, let's try as much as possible to improve ourselves, like our lecturer has said. Let's get ICT compliant. We should all, know more about using the internet, so that even if it's not happening in our office, like one of my colleagues said, you can initiate, modern technology usage, your offices, where the superiors to the superiors over you can begin to accommodate that, agree to that, so that there could be changes. We have to run, even though we are growing, social work is still growing in this part of the world, but we need to also tomorrow catch up with what is happening globally. So that's my take, or that's my suggestion, and that's my contribution as well. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for that nice point too. So like I said, you need to know your onions. Okay, your supervisor is asking you to do something, and you know that he's very difficult. If you tell him to sign, he's going to, and it happens he told you this verbally, just go back and do it. But after carrying out the instruction, you just say, okay, sir, based on what you've said, I've done this, I've done that. Print it and put it in the file. Let it be there. It's going to save your head. And when you're writing a report, you specifically state that and refer to that letter or that mail or message your superior sent to you. That, okay, fine, I was actually in compliance or in line with the principle of confidentiality, like this, like that, this, that. I was actually wanting to do this way, but my superior said there is need for us to go this way. You make reference to that message, the date, the time. That will save your head at the end of the day. So far, we need to address that. Or let me ask another important question that I wouldn't want us to avoid. And the question she asked, I'll still throw it to us, that what can social workers do to address some of these repugnant practices in line with the value of social work? I'm so happy. I'm happy this class is very interactive today. That shows that we are doing a lot of homework, and we are trying to bring our wealth of experience to the full and see how it relates with the principles of social work. Please, what can social workers do? This Galazi Note 9, I don't know who is this person. Please edit your device. Edit your device, please. Galazi Note 9. All right. Olamide asks a question. What can social workers do to address some of these repugnant cultural practices? The example she made reference to is a situation whereby if a man dies, his younger brother or his surviving brother or relative will be forced to get married to his late brother's wife. And this has posed a lot of challenges in rural communities. What can social workers do?
Hello, sir. Hello?
Okay.
Hello, sir. Hello,
Please
sir.
speak up.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
My name is Ronald.
Okay, Ronald.
Sir, I understood the question my colleague Olamide asked, and she made reference within the southeast of the country. Let me start with the social worker. The question is obvious, not when the husband of a wife dies alone. That's what we call obnoxious traditional practices. Her example, for instance, in my locality where I come from, not only that, we are against all those odd practices by the way of social worker. What we are doing to change the narratives is one, as a social agent. We have engaged the communities where those things are being done. Presently, we are reaching them through sensitization, one, through seeing most of the traditional rulers who is the custodian of such practices in their domain, by charting a way forward that the world is now enlightened and that those things doesn't have anything to do within the society we are today. In my state, we have what we call VAP law. VAP law
I don't know what happened.
Hello, sir.
Okay, we can hear you now. Continue.
Yeah. So in my state, we have VAP law. And the people that are engineering these laws are mostly the social workers. We have gone several communities in the states in most of these things, socializing the people, having seminars in their local dialects, going to churches as well. Because
thank you,
most
Mr.
of
Ronald.
these people that, sir?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ronald. In fact, you've seen it all, right? And those examples pointed out are key, are germane in driving home the point. We appreciate your submission. And I want to believe that Midday has taken note of those points. Now, to add to it, you know, the social work profession is at grassroots. It begins from grassroots. That is why we have levels of social work, beginning from the micro to the meso to the macro level, right? Now, we see a lot of these policies, or we see challenges from within our client environment. And we notice that, okay, fine, this is this is affecting a significant number of people within this environment. And there is need for a government policy to be put in place to address these challenges. That becomes the role of social work. That is why, as central in the heart of social work, is what we refer to, or what we have as a core value that has to do with social justice. We practice in the way that we challenge repugnant practices, obnoxious traditions. And one way we do this is by informing policies. Mr. Rona just made mention of the VAP law. Fine. That VAP law has been there for more than 7 years now. But most states are yet to domesticate it. So as a social worker, you can take it up and try to see how you can push to make sure your state also domesticates that VAP law. Once the VAP law is being domesticated, it will now serve as an instrument that you can be used against whoever is leveraging on this obnoxious cultural tradition to perpetuate some group of person or to perpetuate injustice or to relegate some persons to the background. Now, I also believe that your question was tilting, or the question tilted towards the angle that does it mean social work will be conflicting with cultures, the culture and religious beliefs of people? No. As a social worker, we respect people's culture, we respect their religious beliefs. But what we are interested in is if we notice that this culture and belief is a bad one, and we do not interpret this culture and beliefs based on our emotion. We interpret it based on where it has placed them, the people themselves, not where it has placed us as a social worker, but where it has placed them. By so doing, you're taking emotions out of it to render services that in the end will be beneficial to the people. There are so many reasons why it is not even good to get married or to force someone to get married to another person against his or her wish. So if there are policies on ground already, but they are not reaching or going to the extent of addressing any issue, you can as well try to see how you can assist the government of the day to adjust those policies to make it reach the target population. For example, we heard of the past administration had the policy of end power. The policy was geared towards ensuring that the unemployed graduates at least have a job to do. They engage them with something to do for a period of 1 to 2 years, so that at the end of that engagement, they will have a minimum of 2 years working experience that will make them employable. But then, that policy was a nice one. But in the end, we noticed that the implementation process was flawed. Right? So as a social worker, you can assist the government to identify the weaknesses of those policies, that although this policy is a nice one, can you adjust it this way so that it will actually reach the target population? Like in that case, the target population was unemployed graduates. Some of them, after finishing their school, they went back to the villages where there are no networks. So before they could even get them come down to the cities to make the registration, those who were in the cities that were even working had already taken the space. And as such, the purpose for that policy was defeated. So we are like a watchdog. Social workers are watchdog. We are whistleblowers. Whenever we hear things like this, we try to address it both from the local level to the highest level. Might not necessarily come to the government of the day the politicians, the governor, president, and the rest. We can even start from that local level. The chief, the youth leaders, the women leaders. We can start at that level to see how we can adjust policies. Yes, people adjust their culture. It is when you're finding it difficult to inform a change at that level, you can now rely on a more powerful source. And even when you succeed at that level, you can still go forward so that it becomes official. So Olamide, I don't know if that addresses your question. Please quickly react so that we proceed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right. Going forward, we're looking at, let's use the little time that we can look at ethical responsibility. Although most of what we've seen so far, we'll still meet it, we'll still come across them in the see rather. Like I said earlier, these principles are like a skill where you are expected as a social worker to place your practice on and to judge for yourself, to get the interpretation, whether you're doing it or the wrong thing. But these ethics says that ethical principles screen afford the social worker the ample opportunity, practical guideline on professional decision making. In practice, the social worker's ranking of ethical choices must comply with the following. 1, your choices the basic survival needs of all people. Please, Kalode, mute yourself. Your background is distracting me. Your choices must guarantee basic survival needs of all people and the protection of person's life, both the life of a client and the life of others. So whatever you're doing, do not hide under the umbrella of the fact that you're trying to uphold the principle of the profession to do things outside this boundary. I'll give an example. Now, based on this ethical principle screen, it is expected that while trying to uphold the professional's ethics will expose, or if holding the professional ethics will expose the client to some level of dangers, then it is good for us to have a rethink. An example is the issue of confidentiality. Fine, it is expected that we uphold the principle of confidentiality. But what if your client told you in good faith that he wants to take his life? Or your client told you in good faith that this is my wife that is disturbing me, I will kill him one day. So would you say because you're upholding the principle of confidentiality, you have to keep quiet? No. So in whatever decision you're making, make sure that it guarantees basic survival needs of all people and the protection of people's lives. Not just necessarily to your direct client, but those around your clients who might end up being affected by your client's choice or decision. Your decision should also seek to promote equity, that is equal access to opportunities of all people. So again, you want to place your decision on this scale. That is why when whatever you're doing, you need to, in fact, as a social worker, if you're able to separate emotion from practice, in fact, you've solved almost 100% of your problem in practice. You've solved almost 100% of your problem. So while trying to solve the problem, the fact that your intentions are right does not mean you're doing the right thing. So ask yourself, this thing I'm doing, am I depriving others from having access to this? And of course, this is also in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. Remember, Sustainable development goals will always tell you that it refers to developing today in a way that will not affect tomorrow. So while working with your clients, take cognizance of the fact that whatever your client is settling for, whatever services you're rendering to your client, ensure that it will not expose others to harm. Another thing, another principle screen, ethical principle screen that should serve as a skill or is something you're expected to use in screening your relationship and your choices or your therapeutic relationship with your client is to consider the fact that the autonomy and independence as well as freedom of people is very important. So in whatever you're doing, ensure people have that autonomy. Ensure people have that independence. You're not deciding for people, but you're helping them to make the right decision that will not expose them to further harm. And there are situations where your hands will be tied, like we rightly say. You need to carefully select and settle for the one that is going to expose your client to the least harm possible. Either the least harm or the harm that can easily be repaired. And your services too should be geared toward promoting services or should be geared toward promoting better quality of life to all people, not just some set of people. Because if whatever you're doing is just geared towards some set of people while working with a particular group of people, then the purpose or the value and the mission of social work profession as a profession will be defeated. Confidentiality, of course. We need to maintain the person's privacy. And exposing the truth and fully disclosing relevant information on clients and to others. So going forward, Lowenberg and Dolgoff suggested that the ethical principles screen be used in terms of ranking order when ethical decisions need to be taken. The protection of person's life, for example, ought to take precedence over guarantee of autonomy. So we get the point. So while considering this, while making a decision, especially when we are faced with two conflicting or multiple choices that are conflicting, which are all right, we need to settle for the ones that is more important than the other. For example, when it has to do with the client's life. So if protecting the client's life will mean looking down on his or her autonomy, then it's better to uphold the client's or protect the client's life than upholding his or her autonomy and exposing the client's life to danger. They also suggested that it ought to be apparent that the above mentioned ethical principles be directly linked to goals of social work. They also suggested, by way of ethical rules, that the code of ethics should also be examined early in the course of an ethical dilemma. So whenever you're faced with a dilemma, you need to examine all of these. By first, establish whether any of the rules of the ethical code are applicable. Secondly, you have to suggest that the ethical code be adhered to where applicable. And thirdly, it should be proposed that if the ethical dilemma cannot be addressed by the ethical code, then ethical principles screen must be followed. So now, the point is, like we said earlier in our first class, and even by way of reminder today, I made mention of the fact that we have ethical principles does not guarantee the right behavior, because the society is dynamic and people's challenges or situations are different. So it takes a competent social worker to know what to do at a given time, especially when faced with ethical dilemma, what to consider and how to navigate through in making sure you settle for the best choice for your clients. And in doing all of this, please, like we said earlier, the importance of documentation should not escape your mind. Because in the end, you would still need to explain why you settled for this choice and not this choice. The question will now be to ascertain if you did that based on your emotion or based on reasoning. Going forward, we'll now be looking at the social work's accountability or social workers' accountability. The social workers' accountability to clients, or the social work professional or social workers have accountability and responsibility to the clients, to their employers, the professional association, institutions, and to the law. So social workers are accountable for their actions to the values, principles of the profession, known as ethical standard and responsibility. So the fact that you're a social worker, it gives you some level of relative power, but there are things on ground to checkmate how you wield those powers. To be very sincere with you, I used to tell my students, as a social worker, you're very powerful. You're extremely powerful. And that's why it is important for us to adhere to ethical standards, because absolute power actually leads to corruption. So ethical standard is more like that mechanism, that measure in place to checkmate our excesses and keep us in check, to make sure we still practice within the expanded boundaries of the social work profession. And this requires that we act in a reliable, honest, trustworthy manner. That yes, these powers we have, we are worthy of it. And we should continue. We should be allowed. That license you're giving to practice, or that license you will be given to practice, will be given to you in trust. And in trust, we mean that, okay, fine, you're reliable, you're trustworthy, you're honest. So whenever you begin to practice in a way that raises dust, or that your attitude becomes questionable, then that license will be withdrawn. In the end, the C-ISOWN, the Chartered Institute of Social Work Practitioners of Nigeria, would issue a license. We also have another association, like National Association of Social Workers, Association of Medical Social Workers of Nigeria, AMSWON, Association of Social Work Educators of Nigeria, ASWEN, and lots more. And the laws also promulgated and enforced by appropriate government agencies have ways of relating or stipulate ways of which professionals are expected to relate with people. So we leverage on all of this and we are accountable. Now, let us clearly point out these ethical standards and responsibilities that social workers have. 1, ethical responsibilities to the client. 2, ethical responsibilities to colleagues. 3, ethical responsibilities to professionals. 4, ethical responsibilities to professional practice. 5, ethical responsibilities to social work profession. 6, ethical responsibilities to social work institutions. 7, ethical responsibilities and commitments to clients. And as we proceed, we'll now see how we can figure this out and explain them. The first one we want to consider is ethical responsibility to clients. What are those responsibilities? Whenever you hear the term clients, what responsibilities do you have to your clients? 1 is to render service. One of the core responsibility you have to your client is to render service. And that is why no matter your client's problem, you're not at liberty to reject your client. There's a principle of acceptance. Whether it's within the expanded boundaries of your specialty or not, you're expected to accept your clients and later on make referrals to to the appropriate agency that is saddled with the responsibility of addressing that issue. Another responsibility you have to your client is informed consent. The fact that you're working with your client does not mean you do things the way you like. No. Your client has come to you for help. But in the social work eye, or with the lenses of social work, we see the client as an engineer of their own problem. We don't help our clients, but we help them help themselves. So by so doing, whatever services we are rendering or whatever choices and decisions we want to make, we do that by getting their consent. Another responsibility we have to client is confidentiality and privacy. Yes. Whatever your client exposed to you, he's doing so in good faith. That you're a social worker, and a social worker is expected to be trusted. So the very moment a third party gets to hear that information, whether you're caught or not, you're no longer a social worker. But then, like it is often said, that to every rule there is an exception. Because you have a responsibility to your agency, you have a responsibility to your colleague, you have a responsibility to your profession, there is a limit to this confidentiality. For example, while working with your client, you might have issues as to how to proceed. It won't be out of place to seek assistance from your colleague. And while writing report to your organization, to your agency, it won't be out of place to also write the information of your clients, but then upholding their privacy. And of course, your colleagues and your organization understands the importance of confidentiality, so they are expected to uphold the confidentiality of whatever information you're sharing with them. Secondly, or thirdly, maintaining records. Of course, we've said this earlier on. The importance of maintaining records or record keeping in social work can never be overemphasized. So whatever you do with your client, please keep records. And like we said earlier, it won't be out of place if you even tell your client, please, for the purpose of clarity and future reference, I will be recording you. And this record is for this purpose, is not to be used against you. Going forward, another responsibility we have is physical contact and sexual relations. So we don't want to take advantage of our clients. Because your client is a fine man and you're a female social worker, or because your client is a fine lady and you're a male social worker, does not place you in a position to take advantage of your client. And this is very dicey, please. This is very dicey. A social worker needs to be very careful when it comes to this, especially for the guys, right? You want to be careful on how you're close with your clients, so as not to send a wrong message and make it look like you're interested in your client when your client is actually not, when you're not actually interested. So pay attention to some non-verbal cues. And if your client dress provocatively, please call his or her attention that you're not comfortable with the way he or she is dressing, and try to avoid meeting in isolated places. Interruption of services. As a social worker, you're not immune to problems. Some of those problems that made your clients to come to you, you're not immune to them. Those problems can also befall you. For example, you could fall ill. You could develop some challenges that would interrupt your services with your client. So please, ensure you inform your clients. Ensure that you carry your clients along. And if possible, engage your colleague to speed up the process or to assist instead of allowing your clients to just be there. Now, termination of services, whatever has a beginning must always have an end. So it is expected that at the end of every relationship comes termination. So a social worker is expected to terminate the relationship at the end of that professional relationship. So a social worker is intending to discontinue the service to a client for any reason must be discussed with the client. You must discuss the matter with the client and those that are directly associated with the client promptly without any delay. The social worker must discontinue the service and the professional relationship with the client when the goals of helping process have been completed. So there are two things. One, if there's anything that would be the reason why you wouldn't want to continue in that professional relationship, then you have to discuss that with the clients. And if you think that, okay, fine, you've been able to assist the client to some extent and the client should be allowed to continue on his or her own, then you are expected to discontinue the service when you're sure that the goal and process have been completed. So far, so good. We've been able to consider the core values of social work. We've also looked at the ethical responsibilities of social work, the ethical responsibility of the social workers to the client. When we meet next time, we will now consider the ethical responsibility to colleagues. So I don't know if there is any question. Hopefully, from next week, we'll be looking at the ethical responsibility to colleagues, ethical responsibility to professionals, professional practice, ethical responsibilities as professionals, ethical responsibility to social work profession, ethical responsibilities to social work institutions. So you do well to maybe at your spare time, try to see what are these possible responsibilities of social work so that when we meet next week, our class will be interactive. That notwithstanding, I would allow you ask questions based on what we've discussed so far. Let's see if we can use the remaining 5 minutes to address your questions, please. Is there any question? I hope I can be heard. Please, if you can hear me, react.
Yes, sir, we can. Yes, sir, we can hear you. We can hear you, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, we can hear you. We are hearing you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So, in the absence of any, let's call it off here. Let's call it off here in the absence of any question. So, like we said, when we meet next week, we'll consider other ethical responsibilities of a social worker within the professional practice space. I can still see Dr. Atere here with us. I don't know if he has one or two to say, to chip in before we finally round up. Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you very much for the beautiful lecture. I believe each one of us have really enjoyed the lecture today. I want to believe that this is just the beginning. More will also be coming our way along with this lecture, even as we practice. We have challenges, we have dilemmas, we have ethical dilemmas and like that, and we have boundaries. I believe in the course of this lecture, all this will be clarified as we have done as 2 lectures. We want to say thank you very much for being with us for today. I want to say that each one of us should also not rely on this lecture notes alone or the lecture I gave you. We also journey more into it and in-depth. And if there are some problems or challenges you have encountered during, in fact, you raise it during this. I like the fact that today was a bit interactive, that practical scenarios brought up, and each one of us able to contribute. I've not been hearing some people's voice. Let it not be that it's just 3 or 4 people that are contributing or getting the class to roll. Let each one of us who have not been talking, let's ensure we talk. Don't just receive. Have words of experience that you can also share as the lecture goes on. You can post. Take those scenarios, take that challenges we have faced in the course of our discharging of our responsibilities as social work desk officers, so that we can have more enriching time together in this class. Thank you very much for this class. I think we call it a day for here. Then we continue from where we. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. All right, take care and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your time. God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye,
Thank you, sir.
Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.